July 1947. A storm unlike any other rolled across the Lincoln County high desert. But it wasn't just the thunder that shook the ranch lands of New Mexico that night. A mechanical scream heard between the cracks of the thunderstorm, a sound that signaled the end of a voyage from somewhere else. Struck by 1 billion volts of raw energy, the 30-foot craft didn't just crash, it disintegrated. A shower of impossible technology was sown into the desert sand, scattered for miles, leaving behind a trail of secrets that the government would spend decades trying to bury. While the main craft was reduced to splinters, this vessel plummeted toward the earth, carrying something, or someone, within its reinforced hull. The truth sat waiting in the dark. In this documentary, we go beyond the weather balloons and the redacted files. We search for the pieces they missed and the secrets that are still being held. Roswell, the definitive timeline. The paper trail. For decades, the events of July 1947 have been shrouded in mystery, skepticism, and deliberate misinformation. But for those who seek the truth, the evidence is overwhelming. In their seminal work, Witness to Roswell, investigators Don Schmitt and Tom Carey meticulously documented first-hand military accounts, from those who loaded the craft to the pilots who transported the remains. Despite the historical magnitude of these events, the trail was intentionally gone cold. In 1995, Representative Stephen Schiff attempted to recover official records from the Pentagon, only to discover a disturbing reality. The files had been destroyed. The military could not explain who destroyed them or why. We are left to piece together the most significant event in human history through the eyes of those who were there. July 2nd, 1947, the descent. The incident began not on the 4th of July, but on the night of July 2nd at 11:59 p.m. The first witnesses were Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot, respected citizens who observed a bright, glowing object, approximately 15 to 20 feet in diameter, streaking across the sky north of Roswell. Simultaneously, from the third floor of St. Mary's Hospital, Mother Superior Mary Bernadette and Sister Capistrano watched a flaming object falling toward the earth. The four sites of Roswell. To understand the crash, one must understand the geography. There were four distinct areas of interest. The touchdown site, located north of the main debris field. The debris field, located on the Foster Ranch. This is the site famously discovered by rancher Mac Brazel. The second body site, the Proctor site, 2.5 miles east of the debris field, where two bodies were ejected from the craft during its chaotic descent. The final site, where the egg-shaped craft landed. July 3rd, 1947. On the morning of July 3rd, Mac Brazel and 7-year-old Timothy Proctor discovered a gouge in the earth nearly a mile long. The debris scattered across the ranch was unlike anything known to science. Brazel noted that his sheep, usually compliant, refused to cross the debris field, a behavior that persisted for years. July 4th, 1947, a secret in a cigar box. Unaware of the gravity of his find, Mac Brazel loaded his pickup truck with samples. On the 4th of July, he even showed pieces to friends at the Captain Rodeo. By July 5th, he had traveled to Wade's Bar in Corona, New Mexico. There, he sat at the bar and opened a cigar box, showing patrons the memory metal and the strange eye beams, wondering aloud, who's going to clean up this mess? Today, that bar is a simple laundromat.
It was ironic when extraterrestrial debris was sitting on a bar counter in a cigar box.
July 6, 1947. The military intervenes. On July 6th, Brazel drove 75 miles over unimproved roads to the Chavez County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff George Wilcox, stunned by the properties of the material, contacted the Roswell Army Airfield. By the morning of July 7th, Major Jesse Marcel and CIC agent Sheridan Cavett arrived at the ranch. Marcel, a seasoned intelligence officer, would later state firmly until the day he died, "It certainly wasn't anything built by us." The final resting place. While the military secured the ranch, a 13-foot egg-shaped escape pod lay embedded in a rocky outgrowth 35 miles north of town. It was first discovered by an archaeologist and students from Texas Tech, and shortly after by a local fireman named Dan Dwyer, who arrived in a tanker truck. What they saw changed them forever. The small, egg-shaped craft, 2 deceased beings, and a third, reportedly still alive, waiting in the silence of the New Mexico desert. A survivor, stumbling, dazed, and alone in the desert sun. The beings' witness accounts of the occupants remained remarkably consistent. These were not the monsters of 1940s cinema. They stood between 3.5 to 4 feet tall, with oversized heads and large, liquid black eyes. Their mouths were mere slits, their noses minute. They wore one-piece, silver-colored flight suits that appeared so tight-fitting they seemed integrated into their very skin. News of the crash didn't just leak, it erupted. Despite the lack of modern technology, word permeated the town of 25,000 people in less than half an hour. Civilians began their own investigations. Charlie Schmid, hearing the rumors, raced his motorcycle to the outskirts of the Corona debris field, snatching up scraps of the wreckage before the sound of approaching military engines forced him to flee. Meanwhile, in town, police officer Robert Scroggins showed pieces of the memory metal to members of the fire department. Among them was 12-year-old Frankie Dwyer, Dan's daughter. She held the material in her own hands, watching in disbelief as it crumpled like paper and then flowed back into a perfect, seamless shape. The military response was swift and uncompromising. Captain Sheridan Cavett filled his Jeep carryall to the brim with wreckage, leaving Major Jesse Marcel behind to continue the search. But the recovery went beyond the ranch. Soldiers moved through the town of Roswell with a singular mission: total recovery. They entered storage sheds, prying up individual wooden floorboards to search for souvenirs hidden away by locals.
Bags of grain were ripped and cut open to make sure no pieces of the debris was hidden from the military. Roadblocks were set up to keep the locals out from the area of the crash and debris field. At 1 p.m., a Piper Cub, Associated Press photographer Robin Adair rented the aircraft and looking out the window. Below him, he saw the debris field. He saw the military presence and the troop transports moving in. This is another incredible witness account. from the Associated Press.
To this day, it is a mathematical certainty that scraps of that craft remain hidden in the floorboards and attics of New Mexico, silent witnesses to a suppressed history. July 8th, a father's secret. In the early hours of July 8th, Major Jesse Marcel stopped at his home before returning to the airfield. He couldn't keep what he had seen entirely to himself. He woke his wife and his young son, Jesse Jr., to show them the weightless, indestructible material. It was the young Jesse Jr. who first noticed the pastel, hieroglyphic symbols embossed on the inside of a small I-beam, markings that would haunt him for the rest of his life. What did it look like inside that 13-foot pod? Sergeant William Bud Taylor of the 509th Bomb Group was one of the few to peer inside. His testimony paints a picture not of alien technology, but of something advanced beyond our understanding. He described a network of strange, plastic-like filaments, what we would recognize today as fiber optics, entwined within the structure. He saw flat-screen monitors and display panels embedded directly into the walls, bathed in an ethereal violet and pink-purple light.
A tent was constructed beside the escape pod. A photographer was brought in by the military named Fred Benthal. He took multiple photos of the alien bodies. These photos exist in the archives of government, never shown to the public.
As the military secured the site with a full retrieval operation, ambulances, troop transports, and lowboy trailers, the debate over the craft's origin began behind closed doors. While the public was sold a story of weather balloons, experts within the shadows held different theories. Ernst Steinhoff of Operation Paperclip argued the craft was not extraterrestrial but extra-dimensional. Navy Commander George W. Hoover, who worked alongside Werner von Braun, went a step further. He believed these visitors were not from another planet, but were extratemporal, travelers from our own distant future. As the recovery operation intensified on the morning of July 8, 1947, the military faced a surprising logistical hurdle. Despite being the home of the elite 509th Bomb Group, Roswell Army Airfield lacked the specific crane equipment needed to lift the 13-foot escape pod. In an ironic twist, they were forced to hire a civilian contractor from downtown Roswell. This contractor drove 35 miles north to the impact site, where he witnessed the military's frantic efforts. Under heavy guard, the crane hoisted the seamless, egg-shaped craft onto a lowboy tractor trailer. It was immediately draped in heavy tarps, hiding the jagged breach in its hull from prying eyes as it began its slow journey into history. By mid-morning, the first body flight was prepared. Captain Oliver Pappy Henderson, a senior pilot, was ordered to fly his C-54 transport directly to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. The cargo was as grim as it was historic. Decades later, in 1982, Henderson finally broke his silence, confessing to his wife, Sappho, that he had flown the wreckage and the bodies of several small beings. He described them as clearly non-human, their remains exposed to the unpressurized air of the cargo hold during the long flight to Ohio. While the craft was being moved, the man who started it all was facing a nightmare. Mac Brazel was apprehended by military police on the streets of Roswell and detained at the airfield. For 5 days, the humble rancher was interrogated, threatened, and subjected to a humiliating full-body cavity search. The military's extreme reaction to a weather balloon suggests Brazel saw far more than just foil and I-beams. It is widely believed he witnessed the bodies at the second site before the transition to the base. When he was finally released, he was a changed man, bitter, silent, and broken by the very government he had tried to help. At 11 a.m., Colonel William Blanchard issued the now legendary press release. The military had captured a flying saucer, but while the world's headlines exploded, the debris field was being erased. Teams of 60 men were lined up shoulder to shoulder, moving across the ranch on their hands and knees to pick up every scrap. Even then, the military wasn't satisfied. They brought in industrial vacuum cleaners, hauling them 75 miles from town to the remote ranch to suck up the tiniest shards of memory metal from the desert sand. At 4 p.m., the secret went public for a fleeting moment. To reach the base, the military convoy, 4 jeeps,
and a lowboy with a tarp-covered object
had to drive directly down Main Street. Dozens of citizens watched the strange egg-shaped silhouette pass by. A local roofer, working high above on Alexander Street, had the most unique perspective of all. It was a bird's-eye view of a secret the Pentagon was already claiming didn't exist.
Hangar P3, the Central Command. The convoy arrived at the airfield and drove directly into the east side of Hangar P3, Building 84. This hangar became the central command center for the entire retrieval operation.
Inside, amidst the smell of aviation fuel and grease, child-sized caskets were prepared. The interior of Hangar P3 remains standing today in 2026. If you stand in the center of that floor, you are within 3 feet of where the bodies were originally laid out for inspection. One of the most chilling accounts comes from the Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico, Joseph Montoya. After being granted a brief, unauthorized look inside Hangar P3, he was seen fleeing the building in a state of sheer panic. He scrambled toward the base water tower and frantically called his family, shouting, "Come and get me now! You'll never believe it! My God, they weren't human!" Montoya, a man of power and stature, was reduced to a trembling wreck by the sight of the small gray occupants of the craft. By 6 p.m. on July 8th, the focus shifted to preservation. The decomposing bodies were moved from the hangar to a high-security temporary morgue, a medium-sized tent surrounded by chain-link fencing near the base incinerator. It was here that the final preparations were made to ship the future human remains into the deep vaults of military history. By the time the full retrieval operation was underway on July 8th, the bodies had been exposed to the New Mexico sun for over 5 days. The smell of decomposition was so overwhelming that the military moved the remains to a remote area of the base near the incinerator. They needed to ensure the pungent odor didn't permeate the main airfield. It was a grim biological reality of a crash that the world was told never happened. At 6 a.m. on July 9th, a massive wooden crate, 15 feet long and 5 feet wide, sat under heavy guard at Atomic Bomb Pit Number 1. The security was unprecedented. The crate was shielded by 2 concentric circles of protective screens. This wasn't just to hide the truth from the public. It was to hide it from the 509th Bomb Group itself. The military was so terrified of a leak that they ensured even their own elite personnel couldn't see what was being loaded. "4 p.m. A B-29 Superfortress named Straight Flush taxied to the pit. Using a hydraulic lift, the crate containing the bodies was raised into the bomb bay. As the plane lifted off for Fort Worth, Texas, crew member
Felix Martucci
was overheard saying, "Boys, we just made history." For a flight officially carrying weather balloon scraps, the statement was telling. While the bodies were being transported, the narrative was being rewritten. On July 9th, General Roger Ramey officially emptied the Roswell saucer story, replacing it with the weather balloon explanation. But behind the scenes, the investigation was just beginning. Some of the extraterrestrial material eventually made its way to Battelle Institute. Sometime after July 9th, a secret autopsy was performed at the Aeromedical Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Meanwhile, back in Roswell, Major Jesse Marcel and Sheridan Cavett were reportedly seen trying to melt a piece of the indestructible debris over an open kitchen flame. They failed. The material remained pristine, a silent witness to a technology not of this world. The fate of the rancher, Mac Brazel, remains one of the most suspicious chapters. Before the crash, he drove a rickety, broken-down truck. Days after his release from military custody, he suddenly had the funds to purchase a brand-new pickup and move to a new ranch. The implication was clear. His silence had been bought. According to Colonel Philip Corso, the Roswell wreckage didn't just sit in a vault. It was seeded into American industry. He claimed that the Pentagon funneled fragments of the craft to companies like IBM, Bell Labs, and Dow Corning. From these alien secrets, we saw the rapid emergence of fiber optics, integrated circuits, and stealth technology. The companies were never told the true origin of the inventions they were developing. Perhaps the most haunting testimony comes from Marion Black Magruder, a legendary World War II ace. In April 1948, Magruder and a select group of pilots were taken to Wright-Patterson. After being shown the debris, they were led down a long corridor to a room with a one-way mirror. Inside, they saw a survivor. Magruder described the entity as 3.5 feet tall with a thin, squiggly body. Magruder later confided that while the world looked to Wright-Patterson, the true remains and the survivor were moved to vast underground cold storage vaults at Eglin Air Force Base.
The Roswell mystery is far from over, but we need your help to solve it. We know the stories: artifacts hidden in trunks, memory metal tucked away in basements, and eyewitness accounts passed down through generations. If you or someone you know is holding on to a piece of history, the time to come forward is now. Please contact Blake Cousins or Michael Schratt at the links below. Help us bring the greatest case in history into the light. Enjoyed this deep dive? Smash that like button, subscribe to Third Phase of Moon, and hit the notification bell. We're just getting started on exposing the global UFO cover-up. Disclosure is in our hands. We are not alone.